Next, in section 2.2, what we want to discuss is how to do a prime factorization, and then we'll talk about the prime factorization method of reducing a fraction. So first of all, let's talk about the two definitions, composites and primes. A composite number is made up of more factors than one and the number itself. So a composite number, like we saw back in the last example, has multiple factors. So there are many ways to make the product. A prime number has only one way to make a product that with whole numbers that will give you the number, and that is 1 and the number itself. So those are prime versus composite numbers. So now let's talk about how to do a prime factorization of a number. So before we were finding all the factors of a number, now we're going to be finding the prime factors, or the prime factorization. So what we're going to do is we're going to find the smallest prime number that goes into a number, and then we're going to say what times that number gives our number. And then any prime number we're going to go ahead and circle, and then we'll say, okay, now let's do the same thing with that lowest prime, and it goes into it times what, and then we'll rewrite it. Now I'm going to use a factor tree to do this, and I'm going to also show you prime factorization at the same time here. So let's just go through the 12 here as an example so you can see the factor tree. So a factor tree is called a factor tree because it has stems or branches and it has leaves. The leaves are where I put the circles. So if I factor 12 using prime factorization in a factor tree, I start with 12 and I say, okay, what's my lowest prime number that goes into 12? Well, the lowest prime number that goes into 12 is 2. So 2 times what? 2 times 6. So 2 times 6 equals 12. Well, 2 is a prime number, so I go ahead and I circle that, and now I go focus my attention on 6. That is not prime. So 6 is 2 times 3. And 2 and 3 are both prime numbers, so I circle the 2, I circle the 3. And now everything that's circled, that is the prime factorization. So 12 is equal to a product of 2 times 2 times 3. Now another way of writing this is using exponential notation. So right here you see an exponent. A little number written above and to the right of a number is an exponent. It tells us that we repeatedly multiplied a number. And the number I'm repeatedly multiplying is 2. So you see 2 to the second power, or 2 squared, which means I multiplied 2 by itself 2 times, and then I multiply that by 3. So that's exponential notation for 2 times 2 times 3. And all I'm going to require you guys to know is just 2 times 2 times 3 for this instant here. We will get more to exponential notation later on in this chapter too. So that's a factor tree. So we're going to do the prime factorization for 15 and 24 because our next example of reducing will use the fraction 15/24. So 15 here, I'm going to start out with 15 and I'm going to write my branches down here, and I'm going to say, okay, what's the lowest prime that goes into 15? 3. 3 is my lowest prime. 3 times what? 3 times 5. So 3 is a prime number. 1 and 3 itself are the only numbers. And then 5 is also prime. 1 times 5 is the only way you can make 5. So 15 is equal to 3 times 5. And so there's the prime factorization of 15. Now we'll do 24 in the same exact way. So I'll start out here with a branch and a branch, and then I'll go for 2 is the lowest prime that goes into it. 2 times what? Well, that would be 2 times 12. And I'm going to circle the 2 because it's prime, and then I'm going to go for 12. 12 is, well, 2 is the lowest prime that goes into it, times 6. 2 is prime, 6 is not, so I go back and I break it down. 6 is 2 times 3. 2 is prime, so I circle it, and 3 here. So 24, I'll just write that down here. 24 is equal to 2 times 2 times 2 times 3. And it's okay to leave it like that, but another way we could do this is we can say, okay, we repeatedly multiplied 2. So I write the 2 that I'm repeatedly multiplying, and I repeated it 1, 2, 3 times, so I can use an exponent of 3 to represent that. So 2 to the third power, or another way of saying that is 2 cubed, and then multiplied by 3. And that's my prime factorization of that. Now, I don't have time to do it all, but you can start with something else besides the lowest prime. So it's okay to say 3 times 8. It's okay